For those who have kept up with streamer Destiny's personal yet public life, you'll remember that his wife Melina ended up leaving him for another man. Which at the time was a big news story. At the time Destiny had been criticized for having an open marriage with his wife. And it was this that his haters cited was the reason his wife left him. As they warned of the dangers of an open marriage. This happened around 4 months ago, and when Destiny spoke of the relationship between Melina and her new man, he spoke of how toxic it was. Because of the information that Melina had shared with him privately about it.
She tells me like a couple weird things, and we kind of like joke because Melina and Tim are kind of like me and Melina, and that the Tim guy is like ultra clingy, and Melina is more kind of the one who like wants a little bit more space. And I even joke about this with her in DMs. It's like, oh look, you found your Melina basically. So like for example, Melina might be out at a party where she might be hanging out with friends, and they're all kind of like drinking and having fun. And at one point, Tim wants to go home, and Melina's like, well, I think I'd rather stay and like hang out with people. And then Tim starts like spamming her DMs like, no, you need to come home. This isn't fair. You're making me feel horrible. I need you to come home. Blah, 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 right? He's like, that can't happen. She gets okay. Melina tells me, I was outside. We were walking back to the apartment after I got my passport back. This was in Sweden, yeah. We were walking back to my apartment after I got my passport back, and Tim gave me an ultimatum right outside my apartment on the street. And I'm like, what did he say? And she's like, Tim said that Steven is just way too toxic for you and he can't stand to see me in so much pain. So I either have to divorce you or I have to leave him. And I'm like, wow, well, what'd you tell him? And she's like, well, I don't know. I was super stunned because he said he's never done this before. And then Tim claimed that a few of Melina's friends had said that he'd talked to. A few of her friends had said, yeah, they definitely need to break up. They're way too toxic. It's a horrible relationship. And Melina said, well, my friends have never told me that before. And then when Melina didn't have an immediate answer, Tim says, if you didn't know, Melina has, this is Tim's fault. Melina has issues sometimes feeling like abandonment stuff, or like people aren't like giving her enough time or attention, or that's a big like issue, pain point that she has, right? So Tim says to her, this is why everybody you've ever loved has left you, Melina. And he turns around and he storms down the street, okay? Very dramatically, or so it's told to me. Because at this point, I already kind of had a vision of like who Tim was in my head. But after this, now I know everything. I completely understand. Like I understand this archetype of guy. I've joked in the past that like these are the most threatening people for me because they have infinite time to dump onto a woman and then use like weird mind tricks, emotional manipulator, whatever. And he got very aggressive against me verbally. I kind of just ignored it. What financial stuff? And let him have a breakdown. Like I said, I pay for a lot pretty much, and he should probably do his share, especially if he's here a lot. And it was just an interesting reaction. But yeah, I just got very cold. I wonder how much money he actually makes or has saved up. Yeah, he says he isn't making much now because he hasn't worked, and I told him that he needs to, especially if he's going to demand things from me and all. He called me greedy and spoiled, LOL, for making more than he does. And I'm like, I don't want this dynamic. It's not okay for me. And he had his breakdown. I said I'm going outside to eat. He can come talk to me when he stopped crying. And then Mel is like, well, I think that maybe we should talk tomorrow. And then Tim is like, I need to talk to you tonight. I'm walking around outside. I'm feeling suicidal. And Melina's like, oh. Now, the next day, Tim would go on to say this, and it's funny that Melina and Tim are now repeating the story. Tim would go on to say, I didn't actually threaten if you didn't divorce him. I just said I was having suicidal feelings. And obviously, like, we know what's happening. And even Melina laughed at it at the time. Although now, for Melina to save face, now she's spreading the Tim story of like, well, he didn't actually threaten to commit suicide and divorce him. That is true. Technically, he said he had suicidal feelings because she wouldn't go over to talk to him about it that night after he made the threat. If you want to get hyper pedantic, okay?
As we said, it's been about 4 months now since this whole debacle. So we thought it was time for an update on this situation. Turns out that 4 months later Melina and Tim are still together. While she doesn't post him on her own Instagram, he posts her on his, where she frequently leaves comments.
Heart emoji. First. Thank you, Hey Pig Cuck 69, for the donation.
Any bets on how long they'll last?